Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Law, and I'm a product manager here at Google Cloud. My mission is to make it easier for our customers to do more on cloud with less effort. I'm excited to be here today to tell you about Active Assist and how it helps you do that. Look, cloud can be complicated. You know it, we know it, everyone knows it. For many of you, it can sometimes feel like cloud has more knobs and dials than this cockpit does. And this complexity can be overwhelming. We've seen that almost half of C suite executives said that complexity was the factor that would have the most negative impact on their cloud computing ROI over the next 5 years. In fact, in some cases, complexity can make the cost of administration and maintenance higher than the costs of software and hardware. When we dig into the effects of complexity, we see a few big buckets. First, complexity can cause waste. Things like VMs are over provisioned and discounts aren't optimized, all leading to unnecessary cost. Second, complexity can cause security gaps. We see things like access permissions being given away too freely and firewall rule configurations that are so confusing that people are afraid to change them. Finally, all of this ends up causing lots of extra work. Things get misconfigured, and now you've got to spend your team's time trying to figure out how to troubleshoot it all. Now, what makes this worse is that some of the traditional approaches that people take to solve these challenges don't work well or don't scale. Some companies try to keep hiring more people to address the problem, but the reality is that the talent pool available is small and it takes forever to hire. We at Google face this issue too. Other companies go ahead and just buy more resources, but that ends up being unsustainable and adds more complexity. And finally, some others have tried just to write more code or widgets to help, but we hear from them that maintaining that code is costly and ultimately it's not their core mission. At Google, we believe the answer is intelligence and automation. Today's IT environments, whether on-prem or in the cloud, feel like a car from the 1970s. Everything is manual, and you've got to look over your shoulder, shift manually, look at a paper map, all while getting bad gas mileage. We want to upgrade your cloud and provide experiences like modern cars and beyond. How can we provide tools like blind spot sensors and GPS that make your current cloud experience markedly better? Ultimately, we're on a journey to a future where we want to be able to automate everything for you. It won't happen overnight, but we are looking to move your cloud forward in the same way that Google's Waymo is moving cars forward. We're excited to introduce you to Active Assist, here to actively assist you. So what is Active Assist? It's a new solution that brings together an array of intelligent features which all have a common goal, to make it easier for you to optimize your cloud while reducing manual effort. The best of both worlds, right? We asked ourselves, what could we do to empower customers with better intelligence and automation? And after speaking with many of you, we heard three answers loud and clear. First, you want to find out what went wrong quickly so you can take action right away. Second, you want to prevent mistakes from happening altogether. And third, you want to improve your cloud easily. By doing this, we can deliver on three big things for our customers. First, we're going to give you more ways to understand how to optimize your resources and let you automate that. Second, we're going to help you proactively secure your cloud by alerting you to things that need fixing before they become a bigger issue. And third, all of this aims to make your lives easier by reducing the time and toil that troubleshooting, analyzing, configuring, and administering your cloud usually takes. At the end of the day, Active Assist aims to help you maximize your cloud's overall performance without you having to be on the hook to understand every nook and cranny of your cloud. Your cloud should work for you, and that's what we aim to do by helping you automatically optimize your resources. For example, we've had customers like ViewClip who have been able to take advantage of recommendations to quickly optimize their VMs and save money. It's not enough to save money, though. Today, security is also top of mind for everyone. We're in an age where organizations have more and more sensitive customer information, and hacks can be devastating. No organization wants to be on the receiving end of that. With Active Assist, we're going to help you proactively identify security gaps and maintain best practices. In fact, we've had large customers who were able to use identity and access management role recommendations to help make their environments more secure while reducing the number of permissions that were granted. Active Assist will help you by using automation and intelligence to bring key actions right to your fingertips. It takes away the guesswork and the mystery that's normally required to operate your cloud. For example, customers like HippoVault were able to use Network Intelligence Center to quickly troubleshoot network configuration issues. By now, you may be asking, okay, but how is Active Assist going to do all this? The fun answer is that Active Assist is going to unlock Google magic across your cloud. We're going to use our specialties around data analytics and machine learning to power Active Assist. Active Assist is a set of features that cuts across Google Cloud. So whether you're interested in security, cost, networking, compute, data, or our newest offering Anthos, we'll be rolling out a number of features to help. To show you some practical examples of this, I'm going to turn it over to Dima Melnick, who's a product manager on our team.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to show you how some of these intelligent features that live under the ActiveAssist umbrella can help you solve some of the practical, day-to-day challenges you face. And to do this, I'm going to tell you a little story. This is Steve, and he is in charge of an application. He helped to architect and set up the infrastructure for this application, and it's been smooth sailing so far. This said, he built it for normal times, but now with people generally at home more, buying patterns changed almost overnight, skyrocketing the traffic to their application. And scale is hard. Steve and his colleagues face a number of challenges with their application's performance, cost, and security. First thing in the morning, he gets a call from Alice, who is in charge of their customer support department. Alice tells Steve they got slammed with customer calls over the weekend, complaining about terrible load times and overall slowness. And as Steve starts to think about what could be causing those performance issues, he contemplates a couple of places where they could be hiding. Is it compute capacity? Or perhaps networking? Or the data infrastructure layer that he knows was architected with some duct tape? Or maybe it's not even caused by the cloud infrastructure he's in charge of at all. Honestly, it could be anything. And the clock is ticking, and Steve needs to move fast. He's worried that going down the checklist might take way too much time and effort, while his users continue to experience slowness and downtime. Steve is not really exactly sure about what to do next, but then he remembers a new solution that might be able to help: ActiveAssist. He recalls that ActiveAssist's goal is to help folks like him optimize their cloud with recommendations and other tools which reduce administrative overhead. This sounds really promising, so he pulls up the recommendation hub in the Google Cloud Console. Steve is pretty excited. Right away, he is seeing some recommendations on how to optimize resources in his project for performance and high availability. He had a feeling that compute resources on his project might be overloaded with all this new demand, so he navigates to the VM right-sizing recommendations first. He can immediately see that many VMs on this project have recently had extremely high CPU utilization, which can definitely result in long queues and negatively impact the overall performance of his application. And this all is based on Google Cloud performing multiple simulations to select the replacement VMs optimal for Steve's workload, so he's confident to apply these recommendations. It almost feels too good to be true. Things like this used to take a lot more time to investigate and fix, and yet this can now be done with only a few clicks. Now Steve is thinking about how to best deal with these spikes in demand, just like the one they saw over the weekend, going forward. So he turns to the next intelligent feature in ActiveAssist arsenal. Steve already relies on Compute Engine real-time autoscaler, but it appears though that it doesn't work well for his monolithic Java application, which takes more than 5 minutes to initialize. This autoscaling latency contributes to the availability issues that some of his users have reported. So he enables predictive autoscaler, which forecasts future capacity needs based on historical load data, and starts up VM instances ahead of upcoming demand. Awesome. Steve just took another manual task off his plate. Next, he looks into the auto-healing feature. As his team's frequent on-call person, Steve is definitely not looking to get paged in the middle of the night because of an application crash caused by a recent bad update, memory overflow, or something else. To prevent this from happening, he creates a simple health check and enables Compute Engine's auto-healing. This feature will automatically recreate unhealthy VMs to reduce the risk of any downtime. And the best thing, it works for his stateful workload, preserving his application's data. Now that he has addressed his application's compute capacity issues that have been contributing to the poor performance, Steve decides to go deal with that regional issue that Alice has reported, where some of their users in Europe were impacted more than the rest of the world. He suspects these problems might be caused by the network, and he isn't the networking expert, and Steve would typically hand something like this off to the networking team for investigation. But as he's fighting the clock, he decides to open the Network Intelligence Center and see what he can find out on his own. So he looks at the performance dashboard and quickly confirms that everything within GCP looks good. So he opens up the network topology view to investigate if there are any problems with the external access that might be contributing to the high latency. From this view, he can immediately see that something is wrong. Their users in Europe are for some reason being served from the non-optimal US Central 1 region. He gives a quick call to his friend on the networking team, and they quickly realize This must have been caused by the oversubscribed pool of compute resources, which resulted in the global load balancer automatically rerouting traffic to the US. They remediate this issue quickly by adding more resources in the Europe region and reconfiguring the load balancer. And while on this topic of the networking optimization opportunities, Steve also notices this VPN tunnel overutilization recommendation. This wasn't even top of mind, but fixing this now could prevent major headaches later. Looks like one of the VPN tunnels on his project has been approaching its utilization capacity and is likely to turn into a bottleneck within the next few days. So he proactively notifies the networking team to make sure they look into adding some redundancy before this overutilized VPN becomes a real problem. Now, Steve also had a hunch that his data infrastructure might not have been optimally set up either. ActiveAssist helps him to identify one more immediate opportunity to optimize his system for resiliency. It turns out that one of his teams has been using Bigtable without backing up data. If one of Steve's developer colleagues makes a mistake in their business logic and writes some gibberish into a critical table, it can be very difficult to recover from that state. Following this recommendation, with just one click, Steve creates a data flow job to continuously back up Bigtable data into cloud storage to make sure it can be restored in the event of a system failure or, let's face it, user error. This seems like another major improvement that will let him sleep through the night page-free. So Steve calls Alice and tells her about a number of important changes to the application's backend he implemented to remediate all the performance issues reported by their customers. They both are relieved that all these changes were made in just a couple of hours and with basically no labors, investigation, custom scripts, or any significant administrative overhead. Excited, Steve goes back to his desk and continues poking around other optimization opportunities. He discovers that in addition to applying ActiveAssist recommendations from within the Google Cloud console, he could also query the Recommender API directly and incorporate them as a part of his organization's existing workflow. So he decides to go the extra mile and writes a quick custom script that pulls new recommendations from the Recommender API and delivers a digest to his inbox on a weekly basis. Steve also shares the script with his colleagues who run other projects to help them proactively address some of these performance issues as well. But wait, as soon as he's done helping Alice manage this initial application performance crisis, he has got Bob, their finance director, knocking at his door. Bob needs for everyone across the company to cut their costs by at least 25%. Steve never really liked Bob. But they sit down together to think through a few cost optimization opportunities. First, there's the total cost of ownership perspective. Is it time to start re-architecting their self-managed stack and go completely serverless? Or maybe they should go use a different database service. Or there could be ways for them to optimize their current resources. But how can they do this without sacrificing their application's performance and availability? And finally, there's the pure finance angle. With all the cloud products Steve's team is relying on, there's a lot of complexity on the billing side alone, with literally hundreds of billable features, a number of pricing models, and discounts to pick from. Just like troubleshooting performance issues, cost cutting can be really hard and can take up a lot of time and effort. Short of gathering a team of architects, DevOps, and finance folks, Steve decides to go take a look at what ActiveAssist has to offer in this space. So he pulls up Recommendation Hub and focuses on cost optimization cards this time. Right away, he is seeing some recommendations for his application's compute resources, storage, and billing. And he's already familiar with the right-sizing recommendations for performance. So he starts with the ones that look very similar, but appear to be geared towards cost savings. Steve realizes there's a number of VMs on his project that are way too large for the task that they have been initially allocated for. He applies these recommendations, realizing substantial savings from removing this extra compute capacity his project didn't really need. After addressing the over-provisioning, he turns to the unused resources. This turns out to be another major contributor to the high cloud spend on his project. These recommendations indicate that he has got a lot of idle VMs on his project, possibly from previous testing or development cycles. He didn't expect to see this many, but he's not really surprised, as he knows how easy it is for people to spin up a VM and forget about it. And while on this topic, he also comes across another type of idle resource recommendation, Turns out there are quite a few persistent disks on his project that haven't been utilized either. He realizes substantial savings by deleting most of those idle PDs and archiving the rest into cold storage. And Steve is glad that they won't be paying for all these unused resources going forward, and proceeds to look at the billing model optimization opportunities to further reduce costs. He looked into this committed use discount concept a few months ago, but it seemed just way too hard to operationalize. Before Active Assist, he had to do a lot of things on his own, starting from understanding their team's current usage patterns to figuring out trade-offs versus their current billing model, which leverages sustained use discounts, and finally to projecting the impact of any potential billing model changes. So he is very glad to see that Active Assist has already done all this heavy lifting for him. He grabs this screenshot with projected savings and sends an email to Bob, the finance director, to get his approval to switch from the on-demand pricing to a 3-year commitment, which could slash their compute cost by almost 50%. As he moves to the other billing model optimization opportunities, he sees that Active Assist has more recommendations for his project. They have been using BigQuery as a data warehouse. As their application data has been growing, more and more people have been using BigQuery. With their current on-demand billing model, their cost has been steadily going up as well. This recommendation is for Steve's project to consider switching to the BigQuery slot billing model, where they can run as many queries as they need on a fixed amount of monthly slots. Based on his team's usage history, Active Assist estimated they will save a lot on their bill without negatively impacting performance, which is really important to Steve. So he takes this up with Bob, along with his earlier proposal to switch to the committed use discounts for Compute Engine. They walk through the resource optimizations that Steve has already implemented, which resulted in immediate savings, and also agree on implementing the billing model changes that are expected to yield even more substantial savings over time. And as they wrap up, Bob asks Steve if he can help apply similar techniques to other projects in their organization. Steve goes back to his desk to read the manual and quickly discovers there's BigQuery Expert feature, which allows him to dump all these insights and recommendations to a BigQuery table and do custom analysis across their entire organization. Steve is already familiar with BigQuery since they have been using it for a lot of their operational data anyway. So a few hours later, he sends Bob, the finance director, a link to the dashboard in Google Cloud's Data Studio that uncovers substantial cost savings opportunities across multiple projects in their organization. Having optimized their cloud infrastructure for cost and performance, Steve turns to security. His organization never took security lightly, and Steve feels they have a good set of in-depth security measures in place. Provided their recent growth, though, as well as their company's new work-from-home configuration, he meets up with Molly, who is in charge of their security team. Together, they sit down to reassess their security measures and make sure they are doing everything they can to protect the sensitive information that their customers are trusting them with. A couple of things come to mind as they go down the list. Do people have the permissions they need to do their jobs, but not more? Overgranted permissions can lead to incidents, malicious in nature, as well as the ones caused by simple unintentional human errors, which could also result in data loss or infrastructure changes that can be really hard to revert. Then there's the networking layer. Molly tells Steve she's worried about this one, especially after reading a breach about a competitor who had an open port which permitted traffic from an insecure zone, which then went through a misconfigured firewall. Are there any holes in their firewall configuration? And there's a whole set of other considerations around protecting sensitive data, as well as their very own power users, who present a high security risk if their identities are compromised. Steve knows these issues can be really hard, but he feels optimistic, since he already knows that Active Assist should be able to help. This time around, he looks at the security-related features, and is excited to see some identity and access, as well as firewall-related recommendations. He decides to dig into the permissions first. Steve, like many project owners out there, wants to enforce the principle of least privilege when all the project members have access only to what they really need. He knows, though, that solving this at scale is really hard. Many things can go wrong, from breaking something running in production to slowing his teams down with way too much process. It is much easier said than done. That's why he's extremely excited to see Active Assist identity and access management right-sizing recommendations that go beyond just removing unused permissions, by using machine learning algorithms to figure out what permissions users really need. So he quickly cleans up all the inactive service accounts and also grants smaller and granular roles to his project members, literally making hundreds of accounts more secure with only a few clicks. And as he goes through this process, he realizes that he would love to dig into a couple of additional questions in the context of some of these changes. For example, how can I see who can access this service account on my project? Luckily, ActiveAssist has him covered on this one as well. With Policy Analyzer, Steve is able to answer this question and many more. In addition to the one he had in mind, he runs a couple of other queries, which VMs can join delete, who has write access on this BigQuery dataset. It feels like magic. But wait a minute, Steve sees a service account that is able to access the BigQuery dataset that it probably shouldn't. He wants to remove the service account access, but wants to make sure that he doesn't break anything in the process. With Policy Simulator, he can check the proposed policy changes against the 90-day access history to see if these changes would block any essential access which was previously used. And just as Steve wraps up with Policy Simulator, he has someone come to him with this dreaded "I'm getting a denied error" problem. These seemingly simple issues can be surprisingly hard to troubleshoot. They could be caused by a number of factors. Could be a lack of a certain permission, or group membership, or a combination of IAM and network policies causing this denial. So Steve is relieved to be able to use the Policy Troubleshooter tool to confirm that this particular user never had any access granted to them in the first place. So he adds them to a group which provides just the right amount of access they need to do their job. Steve feels that he's now in the position to not only establish the principle of least privilege, but actually maintain it, instead of simply granting all permissions to everyone who comes to him with "my access isn't working" type of an issue. Next, he turns to the network. Firewall is one of the most fundamental protection layers. Managing it, however, is a major challenge for Steve. His firewall configuration grew really complex as more and more access was added over time. So he's afraid to even touch it, as he knows that this will likely break something. That's why Steve is relieved to see these firewall insights from ActiveAssist. He starts with the unused firewall rules, which can potentially allow an unwanted access and present a major security risk to his organization. Steve then looks at the firewall optimization insights. ActiveAssist also brings to his attention things like unreachable and misconfigured rules, which could be redundant. He's happy to see these insights as well, as they help him simplify his firewall configuration and make it much easier to manage and maintain going forward. But as he cleans up his firewall configuration, this thought crosses Steve's mind again. What if I break something in production by doing these changes? Luckily, ActiveAssist has him covered in this one as well. Using the connectivity test feature from the Network Intelligence Center, Steve can double-check the impact of configuration changes as he applies them. And this gives him confidence in a couple of especially tricky scenarios where he wasn't 100% sure if it was okay to remove a particular firewall rule. Having his firewall configuration optimized, Steve turns to one more security gap. He heard at a recent conference that roughly 30% of annual enterprise data breaches involved phishing. He knows he should look into this, but it's tough to roll out and enforce a policy around authentication with multiple teams, systems, and vendors that his company is relying on. The good news is he can now turn to ActiveAssist for help. He enables a phone as a security key recommendation for his organization's most at-risk users, like the ones who have broad permissions and a substantial blast radius if their accounts are compromised. And the best thing? It's free and only takes 2 minutes to set up. Happy about the substantial progress he was able to make so quickly, Steve sits down with Molly to go over these important security gaps he was able to close. And it's a win-win for everyone. The project team can still maintain the flexibility and velocity thanks to the efficient troubleshooting and analysis tooling that ActiveAssist provides in addition to the security insights and recommendations themselves. And the security team is happy with the substantially reduced attack surface, which is getting them much closer to the zero-trust environment that they want. Molly asks Steve if he can help make this work at scale with other projects in their organization, and especially with their new GitOps approach to administering the most sensitive parts of their cloud infrastructure, such as permissions. They want to use GitHub to do everything declaratively and centrally. And Steve already has the answer. While looking into the Recommender Hub, into the Recommender API and BigQuery Expert earlier, he came across this reference solution in the documentation, which can help them do exactly what Molly is asking for. He downloads this reference implementation from GitHub, polishes it, and a couple of hours later, folks on their security team start seeing some recommendations presented as pull requests against their configuration stored in Git. To recap, we looked at several examples of how Active Assist can help improve your workload's performance, availability, and scalability, optimize your cloud infrastructure cost, and improve your security posture. To get started with Active Assist, we encourage you to visit our website and Recommendation Hub in Cloud Console to see if there are some recommendations already waiting for you. Now, some of the features that we highlighted today are only available in limited preview. If you are interested in getting early access to all the new features as they get developed, we encourage you to join our Active Assist Trusted Tester group, which is linked from our website. And finally, check out these Cloud OnAir sessions for deeper dives into some of the features that we talked about. Thank you so much for joining us today.